All right, I have 102. Let's go ahead and get started and get back on the record and pick up where we left off. I believe where we left things is we had completed our examination of Dr. Davids, and we are now turning to KWBA's next witness, who I understand is Ms. Boissevain. Is that accurate, Mr. Bivens?
That is, I do have two hopefully quick housekeeping items.
Great.
Might address before we get to Ms. Boissevain. So first of all, just based on our discussion yesterday, we did upload the deposition transcripts and associated exhibits, formally marked as exhibits KWBA 400 through 413. Hopefully those specific exhibits 400 through 413 can make their way over to the public site as part of the record.
And let's pause there. I'm speaking to my team. We received them, and so I will ask my team, if we haven't done so already, to please move those over to the download folder so that they're accessible to everyone, exhibits 400 through 413. So thank you. You may proceed, Mr. Bivens.
And then the other item, actually, it's just a continuation of yesterday. We indicated that we'd make Mr. Torres available for questioning next week. He's available on Monday and happy to come up. I think Mr. Becerra needed more time to decide whether he'd take you up on your offer to subject him to cross-examination. So I'm wondering if we can close the loop on that for the benefit of his schedule.
Let's see. I'm trying to decide whether to deal with that now, or I do want to deal with it today for the benefit of Mr. Torres' schedule, but let's put a hold on that for now. Depending on how far we get, I think it may be appropriate for me to rule on the motion, and that may resolve some of the issues and may clarify some things. So let's hold for now, but thank you for reminding me. But I will, for the benefit of Mr. Torres and his schedule, which I understand, we will get back to that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure.
And with that, I think we are ready to call Ms. Boissevain.
All right. Thank you very much. I will administer the oath. I see we have renamed Ms. Boissevain now with her correct name. It's no longer Dr. Davids. That's good. It's, oh, my view just changed. Excuse me. All right, now I see you. It's good to see you again, Ms. Boissevain. It's been a little while. It's nice to see you. You are on mute, so I will ask if you would go off mute. If you can figure out how. Take your time.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Likewise, nice to see you again as well.
Yes. If you would please raise your right hand and I will administer the oath. Ms. Boissevain, do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you will give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed, Mr. Bivens.
Thank you. Ms. Boissevain, is exhibit KWBA 200 a true and correct copy of your written testimony in this matter?
Yes, it is.
And Ms. Mullen, would you please pull up exhibit KWBA 248? Ms. Boissevain, is exhibit KWBA 248 a true and correct copy of the PowerPoint slides you submitted as an exhibit in this matter?
Yes, it is.
Would you please summarize your written testimony for the hearing officer?
Yes. Did we want to make a clarification up front?
Well, I'll ask you, Ms. Boissevain.
Okay.
Do you have any?
Apologize. Yes, I do.
Let me get there. Let's just make a clear record. Do you have any corrections or clarifications you want to make to your testimony before we get started?
I do have one clarification. I'm going to talk about Buena Vista's supplemental statements of diversion and use and my analysis of those. I also wanted to point out that in the record of the exhibits that have been submitted, there are also cover letters associated with those statements of diversion and use that give some background and context on the statements, particularly talking about how second point of measurement was filed as part of those exhibits, and then also that there were upstream exchanges that the quantities are given in the cover letter, but those were not included in the statements. That doesn't affect the analysis of my statements, nor does it affect the analysis of water availability that I performed.
Thank you, Ms. Weissman. I appreciate that and for reminding me to bring that up. Would you please summarize your testimony for Ms. Kenzie?
Yes. My name is Polly Boissevain. I'm happy to be here this afternoon to summarize my testimony on behalf of the Kern Water Bank Authority. I'm a professional engineer in California and Oregon. I have an undergraduate degree from Stanford University in civil engineering and a master's degree in environmental engineering from Cornell University. I started out my career in water rights working for Pacific Gas and Electric Company, maintaining their water rights licenses for their hydroelectric projects. For the past 30 years, I've worked in consulting in the water resources planning arena. And for the last 13 years, I've worked for West Yost Associates, where I'm the chief engineer and an engineering manager. Next slide, please. This provides an outline of my presentation. I'm going to start with a summary of my testimony, featuring the three main topic areas of my testimony, which are the water availability analyses, Buena Vista's historical diversions, and Buena Vista's supplemental statements of diversion and use. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Back in the fall of 2018, Division of Water Rights staff requested that the applicants prepare water availability analyses. MBK prepared a joint water availability analysis on behalf of 3 of the applicants, and I prepared a supplemental water availability analysis on behalf of the Kern Water Bank Authority. I analyzed years in which water flowed to the intertie. This methodology is consistent with water rights orders WR 2010-10 and 2010-16. Water Right Order 2010-10 in particular states that water that reaches the intertie is unappropriated water, and that determination was in part based on the testimony of Daniel Easton of MBK Engineers as part of the 2009 FAST hearing, when he stated in his testimony, and he stated in his testimony that water that reaches the intertie is after Kern River water rights have been satisfied. I found that water is available in 9 years, totaling 1.2 million acre feet. MBK prepared a joint water availability analysis, and they used a very conservative methodology using maximum historical use by month over a 41 to 55 year period. The methodology is not consistent with water rights orders WR 2010-10 and 2010-16 because it shows water to be unavailable when in fact there was water in the intertie at particular months. In spite of the conservative nature of their methodology, their analysis still shows water to be available. And depending upon the scenario, it ranges from 135,700 acre feet up to 687,000 acre feet. Next slide, please. I analyzed Buena Vista's historical diversion. I analyzed years prior to and after the completion of Lake Isabella, and I compared diversions to the State Board staff 1964 analysis of second point beneficial use. Prior to 1954, Buena Vista Lake was used for storage of second point water. There are high lake evaporative losses that are reflected in the diversions. The highest diversion year was in 1952, when 463,915 acre feet was diverted. Those diversions are 52,485 acre feet less than the State Board estimate of beneficial use, which included channel losses between Second Point and Wasco Road, a measurement station approximately 39 miles downstream of Second Point. After 1954, a small portion of Buena Vista Lake continued to be used for storage. Buena Vista's Second Point diversions initially decreased. Buena Vista delivered water upstream of Second Point for banking programs, exchanges of Kern River water for state water project water, and possibly sales, and these quantities increased over time. The highest diversions that Buena Vista recorded were in 2017, when they reported a diversion of 563,384 acre feet. Next slide, please. I analyzed Buena Vista's supplemental statements of diversion and use. I reviewed the statements and compared them with Buena Vista records of diversions at Second Point and annual hydrographic reports that are prepared by the city of Bakersfield. I found that the reporting is not consistent for location or methodology, that flows at Second Point are reported on the statements, even though that is a point of measurement. I found that diversions below Second Point were reported until 2008. And then in 2008, the reporting changed and Buena Vista started reporting on deliveries above Second Point, the banking and exchanges programs that I mentioned. And this change appears to coincide with the implementation of the Buena Vista Water Management Program to maximize the use of water resources. Next slide, please. I'd like to give a brief overview of the Kern River features and hydrology. Next slide, please. The image on the right-hand side of this, this slide shows the lower portions of the Kern River, and you can see Lake Isabella in the upper right-hand corner. The gray area outlined in the middle is the city of Bakersfield. To the south and west of that, you can see a light yellow shaded area. That's the Kern Water Bank Authority service area. And then you can see gold hatched lines on the very edge of the image. And that is portions of the Buena Vista Water Storage District service area. The operations in this reach of the river are controlled by Lake Isabella. And prior to construction of the intertie, water flowed down the river channel and then was diverted at the concrete weir into the flood control channel that is on the west boundary of the Buena Vista Water Storage District service area. It flowed from there north to Wasco Road, which is the northern boundary of Buena Vista Water Storage District, and then on into Tulare Lake. After completion of the intertie, flood flows have been directed into the intertie. I'd also like to direct your attention to the two red triangles, the first point of measurement and the second point of measurement. The first point of measurement is what is used to apportion the flows on the river based on the natural flow at the first point of measurement. Next slide, please. The graph on the right-hand side of this slide illustrates the Kern River hydrology. The blue bars are the natural flow at first point, and the gold bars are the intertie flows. You can see statistics on the natural flow at first point in the upper left-hand portion of the slide. Records date back to 1894. And just to get a sense of the variability, you can see that in 2015, 138,700 acre feet were delivered or was recorded as the natural flow at first point. And then the maximum flow is 2.5 million acre feet in 1916. The intertie was completed in the 70s. I believe it was completed in 1977. And since that period of time, there's been flow in the intertie in 9 years. 1.2 million acre feet, not the 1.1 shown, has been diverted to the intertie since 1978. And then Buena Vista also diverted water to the California Aqueduct in 1969, pumping 90,000 acre feet to the intertie. The one other thing I want to illustrate is over on the right-hand side, you see 2017, where the natural flow is around 2 million acre feet. This is the fourth highest natural flow on record, yet there was no flow to the intertie. And I'll be talking more about that later in my presentation. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. As I mentioned previously, I prepared a supplemental water availability analysis on behalf of the Kern Water Bank Authority. I analyzed years in which water flowed to the intertie, and this methodology is consistent with Water Rights Orders WR 2010-10 and 2010-16. I found that water is available in 9 years, and there were 5 of those years had flows greater than 100,000 acre feet. Look back analysis of the entire period of record from 1894, and that should be through 2017, showed that there would be flow greater than 100,000 acre feet in 9 years. Next slide, please. MBK prepared a joint water availability analysis on behalf of North Kern Water Storage District and the City of Shafter, who are joint applicants, Buena Vista Water Storage District, and Kern County Water Agency. They used a methodology that was proposed by the state board staff, which compares maximum demands and supplies. And so for maximum demands, for the first point users, the methodology uses the maximum monthly use for each right holder from 1964 to 2018. And because there are a number of different first point right holders, this actually resulted in 26 different years being used to construct the composite 12-month record. For second point and lower river, the maximum demands were calculated as the maximum entitlement, and this is their entitlement based on the apportionment of the first point natural flow, plus flow passing first point. This would be flows that were released by first point users because they were unable to be used and flowed to second point, and then subtracting out intertie flows. And this was done for a period of 1978 through 2018 and used 8 different years to construct the record. There were 2 supply scenarios that were analyzed. One was the wettest individual months over the historical record, looking at the full historical record back to 1894. And then the second scenario looked at the wettest individual year in the historical flow record, which was 1983. Next slide, please. This slide shows results from the 2 different scenarios and really illustrates why the MBK analysis is not consistent with the hydrology. So for scenario 1, the maximum monthly supply in all years, you can see that they found water to be available in 8 months and for a total of 12 months over the entire period, when in fact water flowed to the intertie in 30 months since its completion in 1977. Scenario 2, the top part of the table shows the MBK analysis results, and the bottom shows the actual intertie flow. And so you can see in the top portion of the table, MBK's analysis calculates that there would be water available in June and August. But in contrast, there was actually flow to the intertie in 11 of 12 months of 1983. Next slide, please. I'd like to give a brief overview of Buena Vista Water Storage District's facilities and the progression of those facilities over time before I get into the historical diversions. Next slide, please. So this map on the right shows Buena Vista facilities from 1922. The maps that I used to construct this figure are based on maps that were in the district's plan that was used, that was submitted to gain approval for the district to be formed. And then the district started operating in 1928. So the yellow lines, the yellow thin lines show the different canals that were in place at the time. The magenta lines show facilities that were proposed at the time. And so you can see with Buena Vista Lake Reservoir in the bottom, the inlet canal was used to convey water into Buena Vista Lake. The outlet canal was used to deliver water from the lake to either the east side or west side canal. And then the Kern River Flood Canal or flood channel is just to the west of the west side canal. So under high flow conditions, water would be discharged to the flood channel and then flow north. Buena Vista Lake, based on the plan documents, had a capacity of 209,000 acre feet. Later records from the 1930s indicate the lake capacity at 232,000 acre feet. Next slide, please. This graphic shows facilities in the early 1950s, and you can see at this point in time, the main canal and the Alejandra Canal have been completed. The green lines indicate levees that had been constructed, and so there were new bypasses that had been constructed to direct flood flows to the outlet canal. There were also levees that had been constructed in the lake to form cells so that water could be stored under lower flow conditions without using the entire lake bed. The maximum storage reported at this time comes from Buena Vista's second point records, indicating that 235,000 acre feet was stored in 1952. The use of cell 3 was later revoked per the 1964 Kern River Storage and Use of Water Agreement after Buena Vista acquired storage in Lake Isabella. Next slide, please. This shows Buena Vista's current facilities, and you can see that they remain relatively unchanged from the previous slide from the 1950s. The primary change is that when the Kern Water Bank was constructed in the 1990s, there was a new intake constructed at Second Point that connects to the Buena Vista main canal, and water can be delivered through the Kern Water Bank intake into the main canal. Buena Vista also conducts spreading of groundwater below Second Point, and they exchange Kern River water with other state water project contractors upstream of Second Point. You can see the California aqueduct shown in the green dashed lines with the circles indicating the turnouts where Buena Vista can take state water project water. Next slide, please. I reviewed Buena Vista's historical diversions from the 1930s through 2017, and I didn't have Buena Vista operational records for the full period of records, so I used a number of different sources. I included, some of the sources that I used included the California District Securities Commission reports, Buena Vista's water balance that they included in their 2009 water management program, environmental impact report, and then also the supplemental statements of diversion and use that Buena Vista had filed. Next slide, please. So prior to the completion of Lake Isabella, I show diversions for two high flow years here, 1937 and 1952. In 1937, approximately 342,000 acre feet was diverted. The maximum diversion in this period was in 1952, 463,915 acre feet. Again, this is lower than the 1964 State Water Rights Board staff beneficial use estimate that includes total diversions at Second Point, plus channel losses between Second Point and Wasco Road. So basically that methodology takes the measured flow at Second Point and the measured flow at Wasco Road and takes the difference between those two to come up with the beneficial use estimate. Next slide, please. So this shows the breakdown of 1952 diversions. On the left-hand side are the total diversions. The quantity shown in green is the amount that was directly diverted from the river for irrigation purposes. And the quantity in blue is the amount that was diverted to storage. The right-hand graph shows the breakdown of that storage with 74,000, just under 75,000 withdrawn for irrigation from the reservoir, 127,770 carried over to 1953, and then lake losses of 155,200 acre feet. Next slide, please. This slide shows after the completion of Lake Isabella, the diversions over time. The dark blue bars show diversions below second point, and the light blue bars show diversions above second point. These are taken from my exhibit KWBA 223, which also shows changes in storage in Lake Isabella, which are not shown here. With the exception of 2017, where I used the statements of diversion and use, and in looking at Buena Vista's exhibits that they filed, it appears that 2017 does include Lake Isabella. After completion of Lake Isabella, diversions below second point initially decreased. Then later, Buena Vista started diverting above second point for exchanges, sales, and groundwater banking by the 1970s. The first evidence I found of this was in 1978, shown here. Diversions above second point significantly increased in 2011 and 2017 after implementation of Buena Vista's water management program. Buena Vista also began groundwater spreading below second point in the 1960s. That's also not shown here, but is indicated on exhibit KWBA 223, where I was able to ascertain that information. Next slide, please. This shows storage of water in Buena Vista Lake cells in 2017. These are two images taken from Google Earth. The one on the left is from mid-June of 2017, and you can see the cloud reflections in cells number 1 and 2 of the lake bed. And then the image from the right is from mid-September of 2017, and you can see by then that the lake bed was dry. Next slide, please. I reviewed Buena Vista's supplemental statements of diversion and use. They first started filing in the late 60s, and they filed under 5 different statements of diversion and use. So I'd like to talk about some of the observations from those statements. Next slide, please. So this first one is a supplemental statement of diversion and use for 2011 for statement 15613. One of the things that I found that was consistent throughout the statements that I reviewed is that the statements have the same numbers for diversion and beneficial use. So you can see in this instance, the amount directly diverted or collected to storage is reported in the middle column of this table. And then on the right-hand side is the amount beneficially used, and those numbers are identical. Next slide, please. I also found that statements have some reporting issues. There's some inconsistent reporting on locations, and you can see this. I've shown the image on the right is a summary from statements 15612 and 15613, covering the period of 1993 through 2006. And you can see initially on statement 612, the second point of measurement is given as the location, and then starting in 2005, the Alejandro Canal is given as the location. Conversely, on statement 613, Alejandro Canal is reported from 1993 through 2001. There was no listed location for 2002 through 2004, and then in 2005, the second point of measurement was the location that was given. So the second point of measurement is reported even though it's a measurement location. I also found that there were some underreported values and overreported values. One most notable was in 1983, which had an overreported value of 502,800 acre feet. And when I compared that with the Kern River flow records that are included in the annual hydrographic report, my estimate was 332,000 acre feet. The primary difference being that the difference between those two numbers was water discharged over the concrete weir into the flood control channel. Next slide, please. I also found that there was a change in methodology in 2008. Prior to 2008, Buena Vista reported only on diversions below second point, but starting in 2008, the reporting changed. The image on the right, which I'm having a little trouble seeing, I don't know if I can move my Zoom box here. there we go, is for statement 15611 from 1995 through 2011. And you can see from 1995 through 2004, the values range from 0 to 12,500 acre feet. There were no reports that were filed in 2005 through 2007. And then starting in 2008, you can see the quantities are larger, increasing significantly in 2011. Later reports indicate that these are the operational exchanges that are the deliveries that are made upstream of Second Point. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the water availability analyses show water to be available for diversion. The supplemental water availability analysis that I prepared on behalf of the Kern Water Bank Authority shows water to be available in 9 years after 1977, when the intertie was completed, totaling 1.2 million acre feet. The MBK joint analysis uses a much more conservative methodology, but still shows water to be available. 135,700 acre feet for the wettest year scenario, and 687,100 acre feet for the wettest months scenario. Next slide, please. With regard to Buena Vista's historical diversions, prior to completion of Lake Isabella, Buena Vista's diversions included diversions for irrigation and for storage in Buena Vista Lake Reservoir, which had substantial evaporation losses. After completion of Lake Isabella, diversions in high flow years were lower, but increased over time as Buena Vista implemented exchanges, sales, and deliveries of Kern River water to groundwater banking programs above Second Point. Diversions increased significantly after Buena Vista implemented its 2009 water management program to maximize its use of Kern River water. Next slide, please. My analysis of the Buena Vista supplemental statements of diversion and use indicated that the reporting is not consistent for location or methodology. Flows at Second Point were reported on statements, even though that's a point of measurement. And Buena Vista reported only diversions below Second Point until 2008, and in 2008 started reporting on deliveries above Second Point. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boissevain. At this point, I think it's time for me to look to you, Mr. Becerra. Do you have cross-examination questions for this witness?
I do, but I've talked to a number of counsel who I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Have,
we just did that.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. We just had this conversation before we left for lunch, and then I forgot about it.
So there may be a number of people with cross-examination that may be more efficient for them to go first.
Great. Well, Mr. Becerra, can I turn to you to describe the order that has been agreed upon, which I'm sure will be fine with me?
I believe, I don't know exactly. I believe Mr. Keel indicated he has some, Mr. Jacobs, Ms.
Okay.
Spalletta.
I'll start with Ms. Spalletta. Ms. Spalletta, do you have questions for Ms. Boissevain?
I do not.
Okay, great. And then I think I had spoken with Mr. Keel about moving up front. Mr. Keel, do you have questions for Ms. Boissevain?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Please go ahead, and then we'll go down the list as is appropriate after you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Boissevain.
Good afternoon, Mr. Keel.
I'm counsel for the Tulare Lake Basin Water Storage District. I have maybe 10 brief questions for you.
Okay.
Do you state in your written testimony that historically in wetter years, Kern River water flowed into Tulare Lake through Buena Vista Slough and Goose Lake?
I believe I discussed that in relationship to my discussion on the water year 1952.
That's my understanding as well. Thank you. Do you know the name of the waterway that conveys water from Goose Lake to Tulare Lake?
I do not.
Your written testimony mentioned both Goose Lake and Goose Lake Slough. Can you explain the difference between those, if any?
Well, I mean, I guess by the very names, Goose Lake would be a lake or historical lake that exists along the river. And then Goose Lake Slough, I would assume to be the river channel. And I'm not sure whether it connects to the south or to the north of Goose Lake or both sides.
Thank you. You may have answered my follow-up question, but I will ask it anyway. Do you have an understanding of how water flows from Goose Lake to the lake bed?
I do not.
Thank you. Do you know the points or locations where Kern River water flows into or is bypassed into Goose Lake or Goose Lake Slough?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question, please?
Yes, can you explain how Kern River water is diverted into or is otherwise bypassed into Goose Lake?
I cannot. The discussion regarding 1952 and the use of Goose Lake Slough came from a note that was included in Plate 2 from Exhibit 7 of the 1964 hearings, which indicated that a certain quantity of water had not been measured at Second Point, but had been delivered to Goose Lake Slough. I'm sorry, to Goose Lake and Goose Lake Slough. So I'm not familiar enough with the plumbing to know how the water was conveyed there.
I appreciate that. That also answers my follow-up question about trying to define what bypass Second Point means. Is it possible, from your understanding, that water may reach the Goose Lake or Goose Lake Slough from points upstream of Second Point?
That would be my interpretation based on the note from the Plate 2 of Exhibit 7, yes.
Appreciate it. Are you aware if Kern River water has flowed into the Tulare Lake bed since operation of the California Aqueduct Intertie?
I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I have no further questions.
I was on mute, but I said thank you, Mr. Keel.
Fair enough.
Before I return to Mr. Becerra, is there anyone else who has who has questions? I see you, Mr. Jacobs, who has questions for Ms. Boissevain, and then I will turn to you, Mr. Jacobs. Is there anyone other than Mr. Jacobs and Mr. Becerra? Let's try that. It looks like not. Mr. Becerra and Mr. Jacobs, had you worked out an arrangement in order between the two of you? It doesn't matter to me. I'm fine with either.
Yes, I'm going to go first.
Okay, thank you. Then please proceed, Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Boissevain. I'm going to ask you a series of questions here. Please correct me or ask if you don't understand the question. Also, if you want to stop at any time for a break, just say so.
Okay.
And Ms. Mullen, I'm going to be referring to a few exhibits. Those are going to be KCWA 15, KCWA Cross Exhibits 1, 2, and 3, KWBA 208, and KCWA 9 through 12, in that order. That helps. All right. Ms. Boissevain, the State Water Board sent a letter to the Kern River applicants dated October 1 of 2018, correct?
Yes, I'm aware of that letter.
And Ms. Mullen, could you please pull up exhibit KCWA 15? Great. And Yeah, if you could, great. Ms. Boissevain, do you recognize this letter as the October 1st, 2018 letter we just referenced?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And did you review this letter around that time frame, October of 2018?
Yes, I did.
And is it fair to say that this letter recommends a methodology to prepare a water availability analysis in connection with pending Kern River applications?
I'm not sure if recommends is the word that I would use, but they suggest that there's a possible methodology that people could use. And then they also leave open the option to use other methodologies.
Okay. Would you, in reference to this exhibit, would you please go to the about the middle of the page there where it says request for information? And I'm just going to read this into the record, and then I'm going to ask you a question about it. This paragraph reads, the purpose of this letter is to request information regarding the reasonable likelihood that unappropriated water is available for appropriation for the applications, with citation to Water Code Section 1260, Subdivision K. The information should be provided in the form of an analysis of available water from either the forfeiture of Kern Delta rights or any infrequent peak flows above existing water rights and lost from the watershed, minus all existing water rights and any other known losses. Division staff recommend that you follow these general criteria as you prepare your response. Ms. Boissevain, do you understand that that paragraph recommended a methodology for preparing a water availability analysis?
Again, could you, Ms. Mullen, could you please scroll to the next page before I answer that question? All right, if you can go back to the previous page. So I think that they suggest a methodology here. They say they encourage all applicants to agree on the use of a common data set. And in rereading this recently, it's not entirely clear what is meant by the common data set, but I assume that that means the hydrology. And then if possible, an approach to senior diverter accounting. And then they give some they give a proposed methodology or a suggested methodology for the senior accounting. But I think the next page, the bullet on the next page, Ms. Mullen, if you could scroll back down, also leaves open the opportunity to do a different type of analysis where they say applicants may choose to conduct an additional analysis using the same underlying data set, except with a different approach to senior user accounting.
Now, the paragraph that I read, the final sentence, literally uses the word recommend, that you follow these general criteria, correct?
That's two of the bullets in there. And then they also leave open under the statement recommend the opportunity to choose a different methodology.
I'm just trying to get a yes or no answer. Does that sentence recommend that you follow general criteria to prepare the water availability response?
I guess I'm not sure what you mean by general criteria. Could you be more specific?
I'm literally reading from the page.
Okay. Can you go back to the previous page, please?
I see. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, do we have a question pending at this point? And if so, what is it?
My question was whether Ms. Boissevain understands that this letter was recommending that the applicants follow general criteria to prepare their water availability responses.
Yes, and there were several. There were, I don't know
Thank
how
you.
many bullets.
Oh, hang
We'll
on.
go through those.
I'm sorry, I'm going to object to Mr. Jacobs talking over the witness. She's entitled to clarify her responses.
Sustained. Ms. Boisvane, you can finish your sentence.
Yeah, so there were, again, several bullets that were listed here that didn't specify. There were some that specified a possible methodology, and there were others that left open the opportunity to pick a different methodology. So I think all of those were part of the general criteria.
Now, this letter encourages the applicants to use a common data set, correct?
Yes,
And a period of record that's extensive enough to be representative of all water years and ideally uses the entire period of record, correct?
yes,
In that second bullet point, this letter recommends that the face value of existing rights should be used for calculating watershed demand, correct?
that's what it says, yes.
And reading down at the second from the last sentence, the letter says that the division staff requests that face values should be quantified based on the maximum historical use for the right for each month and in acre feet, correct?
That's what it says, yes.
Turning now to the next page, page 2. That first bullet point requests tabular format for the enclosed results. And also that the table should provide the maximum amount of water available per month by the wettest individual month and wettest water year based on historical stream flow records, correct?
And I'm going to object that the document speaks for itself.
I'm asking these questions so that I understand that Ms. Boissevan understands what the State Water Board was recommending.
It's the same objection. The document does speak for itself.
I have to go off mute. Let's move through. I'll overrule the objection, but let's move through this quickly, Mr. Jacobs. I'm not sure there's a lot of value added here for me because I can also read the document, but I'll allow you to move forward on this.
Sure. All right, Ms. Boissevan. So, and you were invited to and did participate in one or more of the meetings that took place at MBK Engineers Office to discuss preparation of this joint water availability analysis that you referenced in your testimony, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
But you chose not to perform a water availability analysis in accordance with the State Board's recommended methodology, correct?
I chose not to follow the methodology that's presented as an option in this letter. That's correct.
Okay. Turning now, last year in the Kings River proceeding, you prepared and testified about a water availability analysis for the Kings River, correct?
Yes.
And I'd like now to refer to KCWA Cross Exhibit 1, please. Ms. Boissevan, do you recognize KCWA Cross Exhibit 1?
Yes, I do.
And do you recognize this as the water availability analysis that you prepared in the Kings River matter?
Yes, I do.
I'd like now to refer to KCWA Cross Exhibit 2. Ms. Boissevan, do you recognize KCWA Cross Exhibit 2 as your case in chief testimony in the Kings River matter? And if you need to scroll down, please take a look.
Yes, I do.
And in the Kings River matter, you testified that you prepared the water availability analysis using the methodology from the State Water Board's, quote, policy for maintaining in-stream flows in Northern California coastal streams. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And I'd like to turn now to PDF page 3 of this exhibit, which is KCWA Cross Exhibit 2. And in paragraph 4 there, you further testified that this methodology, I'm referring now to the policy for maintaining in-stream flows in Northern California coastal streams, it compares, quote, unimpaired flows for a stream system with demand, defined as the face values of claimed senior water rights, including pre-1914, riparian, permitted, and licensed water rights, to determine whether water is available for diversion above and beyond existing paper rights, correct?
Yes.
I'd like to turn now to KCWA Cross Exhibit 3. Do you recognize this exhibit as the State Water Board's policy for maintaining in-stream flows in Northern California coastal streams?
Yes, I do.
And this is the same policy, the same materials that you used to prepare your water availability analysis on the Kings River, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Mullen, I'd like to scroll down, please, to PDF page 42 of this same exhibit. And you see here that this page is entitled Appendix A, Water Availability Analysis Requirements, correct?
Yes, specific to the North Coast streams, but the method that I applied on the Kings River.
You just answered my next question, which was, did you follow the methodology set forth in this Appendix A when you prepared your water availability analysis for the Kings River matter?
So hang on, Polly. I'm going to interpose an objection here based on relevance and undue consumption of time. Ms. Kinsey, you, me, Ms. Boyce-Vane, and Ms. Jacobs spent a lot of time together talking about the Kings River and water availability analyses, and I'm not sure that it has any relevance to this matter. And if it does, I think we were treading into questionable value territory again.
Thank you, Mr. Bivens. I'm going to overrule the objection with, I anticipate Mr. Jacobs is going to get to the punchline in short order, and he's laying a foundation for that. I do, without, I mean, Mr. Jacobs, tell me if I'm wrong, but I understand your line of questioning to be exploring the different approaches to calculating water availability. And here you are providing an example of another methodology that has been employed by Ms. Boyce-Vane. Is that generally the direction you're going?
That, as well as the fact that both of these methodologies have been recommended or approved by the State Water Board. And also, I think I've spent about 10 minutes in cross-exam here. So I believe we had a long day yesterday, and I'm moving along pretty quick here. I don't intend to belabor any of these points.
Thank you. You can proceed, Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you. Okay, so scrolling down now to the next page, which is PDF page 43. And I'd like to address your attention to section A period 1 period 2, entitled Water Supply Report. And Ms. Boyce-Vane, could you please read the first 2 sentences of this section?
The applicant must demonstrate that there is unappropriated water in the watershed sufficient to supply the proposed project by submitting a water supply report that compares the unimpaired water supply to the demand by senior diverters, including demand by those claimed riparian and pre-1914 appropriative rights. This analysis is necessary to determine whether a sufficient amount of water remains in stream to supply senior priority rights.
Thank you. And in the Kings River water availability analysis that you prepared, did you follow these rules that you just read by, and I quote, including demand by those claiming riparian and pre-1914 appropriative rights?
Yes, I did.
And on that same PDF page 43, do you see item 2?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Did you follow the protocol in item 2 in developing your water availability analysis for the Kings River matter?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And that protocol includes a list of senior diverters with higher priority than the project being analyzed, and looking at the face value of those rights. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we've just talked about two water availability analyses methods, one that was recommended by the state board in this particular Kern River matter, another one that you did last year on the Kings River. But again, for this Kern River matter, you chose not to perform a water availability analysis based on the methodology that you used just last year in the Kings River matter, correct?
Well, the reasons for doing so are because the systems are quite different and the underlying water rights are quite different. In the Kings River, there are face value rights because those are licensed rights from the, I believe it's from the 1950s. Here we have pre-1914 rights. That's one consideration with no face value. And then the second is that we had Water Rights Order 2010-10. It's very clear about water that reaches the intertie is unappropriated. So I felt that those two factors led me to use the methodology that I did, where I basically identified the years in which there was water that was unappropriated in the stream.
Did the water availability analysis methodology that you used for the Kern River matter, this matter, include, quote, demand by those claiming riparian and pre-14 appropriative rights?
Objection, Vegas to demand.
Mr. Jacobs, will you clarify the question, clarify what you mean by demand in the question?
Well, sure. Here in the Northern Streams Policy, the water supply report, it says that when you prepare that, you should take into account a list of the senior diverters, unpermitted applications with a higher priority than the project being analyzed, claims of pre-14 or riparian water rights, permits, licenses, certificates, or registrations. And so in the Kings River matter, Ms. Boissevain testified that she did consider those pre-14 and riparian rights. And I'm asking if the water availability analysis that she performed in this matter, if she also considered those pre-14 rights and riparian rights.
Well, I would say yes. I think it's inherent in the methodology that I use that the upstream rights have been addressed when there's water in the intertie.
And this includes the law of the river rights.
Objection calls for a legal conclusion.
Ms. Boissevain, do you understand what I'm referring to when I say the law of the river?
I understand that that's the set of rules that allocate a portion river on the a portion water on the Kings River.
Ms. Boissevain, you're pretty familiar with that system, aren't you?
It's a very complex system.
It is, but you used it for your analysis in this matter, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. So you chose a third methodology, I'll say, as compared to the first two that we talked about. What methodology did you choose to apply in preparing the water availability analysis for this matter?
I chose a methodology that's consistent with Water Rights Order 2010-10 that indicates when water is in the intertie that water is available for appropriation.
Okay. And that's it?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to please bring up KWBA 208 now. All right, so this is Exhibit KWBA 208, a copy of the Supplemental Water Availability Analysis you prepared in 2019 for the current matter, correct?
Yes.
And I'd like to take a look now at Table B1, which is on the first page. It might be great to, yep, thank you, to scroll down a little bit there and maybe if we could zoom in a little bit. Okay. Now, the far left column of Table B1 lists the 9 years since the intertie was completed in which the intertie received water. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And where did you get that data from?
That data matches the water that flowed to the intertie.
Okay, and where did you get the data from?
Well, I believe it's reported in the annual hydrographic reports, and I would have gone through those and determined the water flows to the intertie from the annual hydrographic reports.
The Kern River hydrographic reports? Yeah.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. The data that you used for the first point unimpaired flow is listed in the second column from the left of table B1, correct?
Mhm.
Where did you get that data from?
That would have also been from the annual hydrographic reports.
Third column from the left, same table B1, lists the historic annual volume of water actually delivered to the intertie,
Mhm.
correct?
Yes,
And in the next column in table B1, you list the Kern River flood water delivered to the Kern Water Bank Authority, correct?
yes.
And who or where did you get that data from?
I got those from Kern Water Bank Authority.
And just so I understand, in this table B1, that fourth column, you're characterizing Kern River water diverted and stored in the Kern Water Bank as unappropriated water, correct?
I'm characterizing it as Kern River floodwater delivered to Kern Water Bank Authority.
Okay, but you add that column to the column to its left, and those become total unappropriated Kern River water in the fifth column there, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So you're counting that as unappropriated water, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know under what right the Kern Water Bank Authority diverts that water?
No, I do not.
Okay. Now, as shown in the far right column of this table, you added the amount of water delivered to the Kern Water Bank to the historic annual volume of water delivered to the intertie, and you calculate what you've called total unappropriated Kern River water, correct?
Yes.
And why did you decide that the Kern River floodwater delivered to Kern Water Bank Authority in those years, shown in column 4, would have otherwise reached the intertie?
Boy, it's been a while since I did that analysis, but I believe that the river would have been under mandatory flood release conditions. And so that water delivered to Kern Water Bank Authority would have gone to the intertie. But I don't recall the specifics. Quite frankly, it's been 3 years since I did this analysis.
So you think this column 4 water would not have been diverted or was not diverted in 97, 98, and 2006 to the Kern Water Bank Authority?
Can you say that again, please?
Sure. I guess I did not understand your answer. Are you saying that you do not think that in 97, 98, and 2006, that this column 4 water was actually diverted to the water bank?
No, I didn't say that.
Well, did you say that you thought it would go to the intertie?
I thought that if they had not diverted it, it would have gone to the intertie because it was, I believe it was during the flood release period when water was going to the intertie.
Okay. All right, turning now to the second page of this exhibit. I believe you say here that when first point unimpaired flow is equal to or greater than about 1.6 million acre feet per year, then at least 100,000 acre feet of unappropriated water reaches the intertie, correct?
And yes, and that was based on a review of the historical years in which water had flowed to the intertie.
Okay, and can you expand a little bit? How did you reach that conclusion?
I reviewed the data in table B-1, which shows that when there's at least 100,000 acre feet in the intertie, that the unimpaired flow at first point of measurement is at least 1.6 million acre feet.
And I mean, does your report, is that just a report as a matter of fact, or Is that a projection into the future?
It's,
Sorry, go ahead.
it's not a projection. It's a statement of the fact of what I observed in the data, in the historical data.
Okay. So you're not projecting, your water availability analysis doesn't project that the water will be available in the future when first point unimpaired flow is 1.6 million acre feet?
No, projecting into the future was not part of my analysis. It was based on the historical observations.
Isn't that what a water availability analysis does? It predicts what water is available to divert in the future.
Objection, argumentative.
I'm trying to understand.
Overruled. I'd like to hear the answer to this.
Well, I think inherent is the methodology is that you're looking back and making an assessment of water that's available based on the historical records. So to some degree, I guess that would be considered a projection, but I guess I didn't analyze whether 1.6 million acre feet would always be the threshold at which water is available, is what I'm saying.
Okay. Now your water availability analysis does look back, as you just referenced, and it uses this 1.6 million acre foot unimpaired first point flow, and it predicts when water would have flown into the intertie based on past records. Is that correct?
I don't believe I used the 1.6 million acre feet. I did a regression of years in which there was first point annual unimpaired flow and water in the intertie that was greater than 100,000 acre feet, and did a regression over the whole period of record to determine whether there were other years in which water would be delivered to the intertie.
Okay, well, I may have misspoke, but the first point unimpaired flow was the 1.6 million acre feet, right?
No, I used the individual values from the years in which there was at least 100,000 acre feet flowing to the intertie.
Got it. And you did the regression based on that.
Correct.
How many data points is that linear regression based on?
I'd have to take a look. Can you go back to table B1, please? I believe it was based on 4 data points. 2006 also had above 100,000 acre feet, but that was kind of an outlier year. I believe in table B-1, I have a footnote to that effect. Can you scroll down, please, Ms. Mullen, to the next page? Oh, it might be on table B2. Yeah, so footnote B indicates the linear regression that I prepared, and it was based on the 4 years in which there was at least 100,000 acre feet in the intratie.
Okay, and you correlated that to what the first point unimpaired flows were, and you did this regression equation, correct?
Correct.
Okay, there you go. Now, you'll agree with me that the intertie is actually operated in 9 years, not just 4, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I think you just spoke about one of the years being sort of an outlier, this 2006 year with, I believe there were some dam safety issues. But why didn't you use the rest of the data to do your regression analysis? When I say the rest of the data, the other 4 years.
Because the quantities were relatively small, and I was looking at years in which at least 100,000 flowed to the intertie. Excuse me.
Do you think you would have had a more accurate, better representation on your linear regression if you had included more data points?
No, I don't believe so, because the flows are very low and there are different reasons for those flows occurring. For example, in 1984, there was 26,700 acre feet that flowed to the intertie, but that was following the very wet year of 1983. And so there are definitely antecedent conditions coming into play. So I chose the years based on those in which there was at least 100,000 acre feet to the intertie, because I thought that was a good threshold to use, and not look at some of the very small years that have various reasons for water going to the intertie.
Okay. I'd like to talk a little bit more about this table B2. This table includes in the farthest right-hand column, what your equation predicts to be Kern River water discharged into the intertie. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And in this same table, the second to the last column reports the actual historical volume reported in Kern River records to be the total amount of Kern River water discharged into the intertie, correct?
That's correct.
And with regard to the year 1982, your equation predicted no Kern River water discharged into the intertie, correct?
Correct.
But in fact, there was 10,339 acre feet discharged into the intertie in 1982, correct?
That's correct.
Likewise, in the year 1984, your equation predicted no Kern River water discharged into the intertie, but in fact, there was 26,000.
Question over again, I'm sorry.
Likewise, in the year 1984, your equation predicted no Kern River water discharged into the intertie, but in fact, there was 26,720 acre feet discharged into the intertie. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Also in 2006, your equation predicted no Kern River water being discharged into the intertie, but in fact, there was 119,760 acre feet discharged into the intertie that year, correct?
Well, I think that my footnote B is explanatory on why I chose to not use 2006 and why it doesn't predict that water would be available. As we've discussed, that was an odd year with the flood control concerns or the dam safety concerns and the lowering of Lake Isabella.
Yes, there are sometimes operational considerations that come up in operation of the Lake Isabella and the intertie, correct?
Yes,
And in 2017, your equation predicted that 368,000 acre feet of Kern River water would be discharged into the intertie, correct?
yes, that's correct.
However, in 2017, the United States Army Corps of Engineers never ordered a mandatory release of Kern River water from storage in Isabella Reservoir, correct?
Yes,
Would you agree that the intertie operates infrequently?
yes, I guess. What do you mean by infrequently?
Well, I'm gonna let you define that however you would like to.
Okay.
Doesn't operate every year, right?
No, it does not.
And in fact, there have been significant stretches, including decades, when it has not operated, correct?
Right, but I don't think the frequency of the operation of the intertie is an indication. I mean, when the intertie operates, there's water available. It has been infrequent and it has varied from over time, but there's when it flows, there's water available.
And when it has operated, the number of days or months vary, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you consider performing a water availability analysis that looked at monthly flows?
No, I did not. I think the result would have been the same in the numbers that I produced because those are based on the hydrologic records from each year, and whether I used a monthly or an annual amount, the results would be the same.
Did you perform any linear regression analysis using monthly flow data, such as a linear regression for just the month of May or just the month of June?
No, I did not.
And why did you not perform that kind of analysis?
Because I felt that the use of the annual data set was sufficient.
Could you have prepared a more robust water availability analysis if you had done it on a monthly step?
I don't know that it would have necessarily been more robust.
I mean, I think we just discussed the intertie itself doesn't operate for an entire year usually, correct? It can operate for a month or even for a couple of weeks.
Right.
Okay. Would a monthly or even a daily regression analysis provide different estimated volume of unappropriated Kern River water than is shown in the far right column of table B2?
I didn't analyze them monthly or daily, so I don't feel like I can opine on that.
Fair enough. Your supplemental water availability analysis really looks at only one variable. The total annual unimpaired flow is measured at first point. Is that correct?
Yes, and it compares that with the intertie flow.
Aren't there other relevant factors?
There may be, but when I did the analysis and looked at the regression equation, the R squared value of over 99 gave me confidence that the relationship was valid to use for the entire historical period.
Well, what about looking at the storage capacity at Lake Isabella, for example? Would that have been a relevant factor?
It could have been.
For instance, if at the beginning of the water year, Lake Isabella was full to the brim, and we know there's a flood component that is not full. But let's assume that the conservation space was full. Isn't that a factor that could result in the intertie operating much sooner in the year than otherwise?
Possibly, but I was again basing my analysis on the historical operation of the intertie, not looking at theoretical or hypothetical scenarios that would be different than that.
Okay, and I won't go through them all, but you didn't consider, for instance, storage in Buena Vista Lake or in the various underground banking facilities, such as the Kern Water Bank?
No, I did not.
Did you consider regional groundwater levels?
No, I did not.
Are those relevant?
I'm not sure because, again, based on the historical record, the Kern River demands had been satisfied. And so that is the data set that I used. Again, I'm not looking at different scenarios, analyzing what other factors could come into play. I'm looking at the historical conditions and using that to project over the entire hydrologic period.
What about monthly or annual variations in precipitation? And here I'm thinking of Dr. David's testimony from yesterday, where he said that precipitation reduced the irrigation demand for crops.
Well, again, certainly precipitation comes into play, but I'm using the historical record upon which the precipitation is based, the flows are based, and I'm comparing the annual flow, the annual unimpaired volume first point with the intertie operations.
Okay.
It was not a theoretical analysis looking at different variables and how they might impact the analysis.
Preparing your water availability analysis, did you rely on any of the intertie agreements?
I'm not familiar with the intertie agreements.
Okay. So you have not reviewed any of the agreements that govern operation of the intertie?
I have not.
Okay. I had a few questions on that, but I might not now.
Can I suggest that this might be a good time to take a break, if not for the witness, then frankly for me?
That's fine. I have about 5 questions left, but I have no problem.
I think I could wait 5 questions.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's proceed.
Ms. Boissevain, do you know when will the United States Army Corps of Engineers next order a mandatory release of Kern River water from Isabella?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
Do you know when will be the next time the United States Army Corps orders a mandatory release of Kern River water from Isabella Reservoir?
No, I do not.
Do you know when will be the next time the intertie is authorized to operate?
Well, I would say it would be authorized to operate under mandatory release. I don't know when that will be. I don't have a
Okay.
crystal ball.
And when that happens, do you know how long it will be operated for?
No, I do not.
Okay. Do you know what amount of Kern River floodwaters will be discharged?
No, I do not.
And do you know what the conditions will be that will require the intertie to operate?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. That was exactly 5. I guess you were counting, but you're right
I
on.
have them written.
So it is 2:22. Let's take a 20-minute break and we will reconvene at 2:42. All right, it is 2:42. I think we can go back on the record where we left off. I believe we had, Mr. Jacobs had completed his cross-examination. And then I will look to you, Mr. Becerra. Do you have additional questions for Ms. Boissevain?
Yes,
Please go ahead and ask your questions.
thank you. Ms. Mullen, could we please pull back up Exhibit KWBA 208? First of all, Ms. Boissevain, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Becerra.
And you probably know this, but my name's Ryan Becerra. I'm the attorney for Buena Vista Water Storage District in this matter. I'll use the phrase Buena Vista pretty frequently. Do you understand that when I use that, I'm referring to Buena Vista Water Storage District?
Yes, I do.
Ms. Mullen, I'm sorry, I needed to get KWBA 208. Wonderful, thank you. And could we please scroll up to the preceding page to the text just above table B1? Ms. Boissevain, do you see the text there just above table B1 that refers to water that KWBA diverted when the Kern River was under mandatory flood release conditions?
Yes, I do.
To the best of your knowledge, does Kern Water Bank Authority hold any pre-1914 water rights that authorize it to divert water from the Kern River?
I don't believe so, no.
To the best of your knowledge, does Kern Water Bank Authority hold any water right permits that authorize it to divert water from the Kern River?
No, I don't believe so.
To the best of your knowledge, does Kern Water Bank Authority hold any water right licenses that authorize it to divert water from the Kern River?
No.
Thank you. Can we, Ms. Mullen, can we please scroll down to the next page? And the text below table B2. Thank you. Ms. Boissevain, do you see your footnote B there?
Yes, I do.
Is your water availability analysis is based on a statistical regression between unimpaired first point flows and water going through the, I'm sorry, let me go back. The phrase unappropriated Kern River water you use in that note, what does that mean exactly?
It means water that flowed to the intertie.
So your footnote B describes your statistical regression analysis as a regression between unimpaired first point annual flows and unappropriated Kern River water, which is water to the intertie. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And you use the years 1978, 1983, and 1998 for the years from which you used annual flows for that regression?
And also 1980.
Oh, thank you. That regression analysis did not consider the timing of runoff in the Kern River, did it? In any of those years?
Well, I mean, the timing of the runoff to the Kern River is inherent in the data that I used for the first point analysis in the intertie flows.
You used total first point flows as the basis for your regression, correct?
Yes, I did.
So the regression considers no variation in the timing of runoff. Is that accurate?
It's not really, yeah, it's not really using timing. It's using the total first point annual flow.
Do you understand whether the timing of runoff in the 4 years you used as the basis for your regression was all the same?
Well, I expect it would not be.
For example, in 1978, are you familiar with the fact there was a large storm in February of 1978 in the Kern River area?
I am now.
Have you researched the extent to which the Kern River intertie ran in 1978 as a result of that specific February storm?
No, I did not.
Have you reviewed any of DWR's bulletins 132 concerning the operation of the California Aqueduct and the Kern River intertie?
No, I have not.
Do you know whether the first use of the intertie in 1978 was to run water backwards from the California Aqueduct into the Kern River?
No, I did not.
Okay. I'd like to pull up KCWA cross exhibit number 3, please. And thank you, Ms. Mullen. Could we please go to the first page so Ms. Boissevain can identify the document? Ms. Boissevain, do you see that this is the state board's policy for maintaining in-stream flows in Northern California coastal streams?
Yes, I do.
And you applied the methodology in this policy in your analysis of unappropriated water for the Kings River. Is that accurate?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Ms. Mullen, can we please go to PDF page 43? And Ms. Boissevain, do you see the paragraph number 2 under the heading A.1.2?
Are you talking about the paragraph that's identified by numeral 2?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Do you see the last sentence in that paragraph that reads, to the extent information is available in the State Water Board's records or other sources of information, the demand and season of diversion of riparian and pre-1914 appropriative water right holders and claimants shall also be included? You see that?
Yes, I do see that.
Ms. Mullen, can we please pull up exhibit North Kern 47? Ms. Boissevain, do you recognize this document as the Water Rights Board's engineering staff analysis from the 1964 water right hearing for the Kern River?
Yes, I do.
And you refer to this document in your testimony, is that accurate?
Yes, I do.
Ms. Mullen, can we please go to PDF page 10? And unfortunately, you'll have to rotate this 90 degrees clockwise. Oh. I take that back. There we go. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Mullen. Ms. Boissevain, do you see that in this table, the State Water Rights Board stated quantities of water beneficially used?
Yes, I see that.
Do you see that it includes Second Point?
Yes, I see that.
Okay. Ms. Mullen, can we please scroll down to 1952? Thank you. Ms. Boissevain, do you see that in this memorandum, the State Water Rights Board stated that 516,400 acre feet of water were beneficially used in 1952?
I see that, yes.
Is it fair to state that this 1964 engineering staff analysis is present in the State Board's records?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. To the best of your knowledge, is this 1964 staff analysis present in the State Board's records?
I would presume so.
Did you assume that the Second Point right would beneficially use 516,400 acre feet in preparing your water availability analysis for this hearing?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. In preparing your supplemental water availability analysis you are presenting in this hearing, did you assume that 516,400 acre feet would be beneficially used under the Second Point right?
No, as I've explained, the basis for my analysis was Water Rights Order 2010-10, which was based on Dan Easton's methodology from the 2009 FAS hearing, in which it was determined that water that reached the intertie is in excess of the upstream Kern River rights.
So your supplemental water availability analysis for this hearing does not assume beneficial use under the Second Point right of up to 516,400 acre feet in a year. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. It's based on the historical records of when water flowed to the intertie.
Thank you. Ms. Mullen, can we please go to Ms. Boissevain's exhibit KWBA 201? Thank you. Ms. Mullen, do you recognize, I'm sorry, Ms. Boissevain, do you recognize this as your resume?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Ms. Mullen, can we please scroll down to the next page? And Ms. Boissevain, do you see your resume entry, water rights support, Kern Water Bank Authority, Bakersfield, California?
Yes.
And do you see your entry assisted the authority with water rights support related to their water rights application for appropriation of flood flows from the Kern River?
Yes.
In your opinion, is the Kern Water Bank Authority's water right application only seeking flood flows from the Kern River?
That's my understanding, yes.
How would you characterize flood flows?
Well, I think historically, flood flows have been when there's been a declaration. I'm not going to be able to, just a moment. Let me gather my thoughts here. I think it's when there's a declaration of a mandatory release on the river. When the court, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I interrupted you. Please complete your answer.
No, when the Corps has determined that water needs to be evacuated out of Lake Isabella and there's a mandatory flood release on the river.
Your understanding is the Kern Water Bank Authority's water right application is only seeking water available in those conditions?
I would hesitate to say that. It's been some time since I've looked at their application, and I think that gets into some legal issues, so I don't feel qualified to answer that.
Was that your understanding you used in preparing this entry on your resume?
Well, I think the entry
Vegas
on
to that. Hang on. Objection. Vegas to that. I don't understand.
Maybe try again, Mr. Becerra. Recharacterize the
You-
question.
Sure. Ms. Boyce-Fain, you just stated your understanding of conditions when flood flows are available in the Kern River. Is that accurate?
Yes,
And that is when the Army Corps of Engineers has required a flood release from Lake Isabella. Is that accurate?
yes,
The term flood flows used on your resume entry here, does that reflect your understanding of when flood flows are available in the Kern River?
yes.
Thank you. Ms. Mullen, can we please scroll down to the next page of Ms. Boissevain's resume? Thank you. Ms. Boissevain, do you see the entry water supply alternatives studies, City of Santa Cruz, California?
Yes, I do.
When did you do that work?
That work was some time ago. I believe it was in the, it would have been in the early to mid 1990s.
And were you working at Camp Dresser and McKee at the time?
Yes, I was.
What was your role in that project?
My role was as the project engineer of that project. So I was working on behalf of the project manager, managing the engineering investigations and the technical work.
Did you review the report as it was being prepared?
I wrote the report. Yes,
You wrote the whole report?
I wrote portions of the report. Other people contributed to the report. Yes.
Okay. Ms. Mullen, can we please pull up exhibit Buena Vista 805? And Ms. Mullen, can we see that whole page so Ms. Boissevain can take a look? Ms. Boissevain, is this the cover page of the Santa Cruz report?
Yes, it is.
And I'll represent that this exhibit is excerpts of that report, and I can explain where to find the whole thing if necessary. But so, Ms. Boissevain, this is excerpts of the report. Ms. Mullen, can we please go down to, I believe it's PDF page 3. It's numbered page 38. I'm sorry, I apologize. We need to scroll down. We're looking for a table on page 4-4. My apologies. I think it's one more. There we go. Thank you very much, Ms. Mullen. That's the table I'm looking for. So, Ms. Boissevain, you were heavily involved in the preparation of the study for the City of Santa Cruz, correct?
Yes.
Are you familiar with whether the City of Santa Cruz owns and uses pre-1914 appropriated water rights?
At this point, I don't recall this study was done quite some time ago, and I don't recall the nature of their rights.
Okay, thank you. The footnote 1 to that study, does it reflect your understanding of what pre-1914 rights authorize?
Again, it's been a long time since I've looked at this, so, I don't recall the specifics of how, I don't recall the specifics of the nature of their rights.
So do you understand, however, that a pre-1914 water right with the appropriate agreements potentially could allow for the diversion of a stream's full natural flow?
Well, that's what the footnote says, yes.
And this is a report on which you worked, correct?
Yeah, yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. I believe you stated earlier, and it's in your testimony, you began your career working at Pacific Gas and Electric Company, correct?
That's correct.
And your job involved maintaining water right licenses?
Yes, I worked for a senior engineer whose responsibility was to maintain the water rights licenses for each of the hydroelectric projects.
And Ms. Mullen, we can probably take the exhibit down so we can all see each other a little better on the Zoom screen. Thank you very much. What does it mean that you maintained water right licenses, Ms. Boissevain?
Well, I think the things that we did was we made sure that the reports of licensee were completed and filed on accurately, and that the records, the historical reports of licensee had been filed. So a lot of it was maintaining the reports of licensee and making sure that accurate information was put in those and that they were filed in a timely fashion.
Do you recall whether some of those licenses you maintained involved storage reservoirs?
I don't recall that.
Do you recall whether you always reported the maximum amount of use authorized by a license in every year?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Let me break that up a little bit. A water right license states a maximum volume of water that can be appropriated. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
And for a storage reservoir, would they often contain a maximum amount of water that could be stored in a given year?
Well, I think the Pacific Gas and Electric licenses were related to hydroelectric operations. So they were, primarily looking at the flow rates that were established for the hydroelectric facilities. Again, I don't recall that there were storage, associated with those, but it's been quite some time. So my recollection, just may be hazy.
Okay.
And Ms. Kenzie, this gives me a moment to object to this entire line of questioning is irrelevant. I mean, the Kern River system and its storage reservoirs are totally different from wherever. And by the way, there's a lack of foundation as to where these PG&E reservoirs happen to be. But I just do not see any relationship between the analysis that Ms. Boissevain conducted here and as yet unidentified PG&E storage reservoirs or City of Santa Cruz water rights for that matter.
Ms. Boissevain has this listed as some of her pertinent experience. I'm trying to understand what that experience was.
I think, Mr. Becerra, I need more of a connection there. Try again. If you want.
You know what? We have plenty to do today. I'll move on.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Boissevain, or Ms. Mullen, can we pull up Ms. Boissevain's testimony in exhibit KWBA 200? And specifically, can we go to page 2, paragraph 6? And Ms. Boissevain, just to explain what I'm going to try to do in some cases, to try to move a little faster, I'm going to try to summarize at times, and hopefully I get that right. But if I don't, we can break it up. So in paragraph 2, do you describe how there were not available Kern River records to determine the precise amount of diversion and use before 1914 under the second point, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you investigate yourself whether diversion records were available from any source?
I think I relied on the historical, I relied on the historian, the historian's information, and I think I also cited a reference from Bulletin 9. If you can scroll down to the next page, please. Oh, this might be my summary. I think I discuss it later on.
Well, let me ask you, Ms. Boissevain, are you aware that there is a large volume of Miller and Lux records lodged at UC Berkeley's Bancroft Library?
I understand that there's a Miller and Lux collection there, yes.
Do you understand that Miller and Lux was a predecessor to Buena Vista in using the second point water right?
Yes.
Did you conduct any research as to what diversion records might have been located in the Miller and Lux records at the Bancroft Library?
I did not. I relied on Bulletin 9, which stated that the records, there were very few records that were available other than the first point records.
Okay, thank you very much. Are you aware of a lawsuit against Miller and Lux entitled Title Insurance and Trust versus Miller and Lux?
No, I've heard about it in the testimony that's been given, but I'm not familiar with the details of that, that litigation.
So did you review any information that might be available in the historical records associated with that lawsuit?
No, I did not.
Thank you. Ms. Mullen, can we please go to paragraph 32 of Ms. Boissevain's testimony, which is PDF page 14? And Ms. Boissevain, this paragraph discusses that 1964 Water Rights Board staff analysis we discussed earlier. Is that accurate?
Yes.
You see, and Ms. Mullen, can we please scroll down to the next page? This would be page 14. In that sentence that crosses from page 13 to page 14, you describe how the staff analysis accepted water as going to certain destinations as beneficially used. Is that accurate?
Well, I think what I was saying there was that they used the numbers that were presented in Exhibit 7, where it was called absorption of beneficial use as the estimates of beneficial use.
And do you disagree with that approach?
Well, with regard to Exhibit 7, I'm not sure what absorption of beneficial use is. I can follow the numbers of how Exhibit 7 was used to come up with the table of beneficial use, but I think at the risk of straying into legal issues, I will stop there.
So do you understand that that 1964 staff analysis included what you identify here as river channel losses between Second Point and Wasco Road measurement stations?
Yes.
And your understanding is those two locations are 39 miles apart. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And does water flow from Second Point of measurement to the Wasco Road measurement station through what's called the flood canal?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. Ms. Mullen, can we please pull up Ms. Boissevain's Exhibit 209? Exhibit KWBA 209. And Ms. Mullen, thank you very much. You read my mind. Ms. Boissevain, the orange hatched lands on your figure, what are those?
Those are the two different service areas of the Buena Vista Water Storage District. The Button Willow service area shown on the north and the Maples Ranch service area shown on the south.
Okay, and this figure is labeled existing and proposed facilities 1922, correct?
Yes,
So that's what you understood were the facilities in place as of 1990 or as of 1922.
yes,
And you identify the Kern River flood canal on exhibit 209. Is that accurate?
yes,
Okay. And at the top of the figure, there's a straight line running east to west. Do you see that?
yes, I do.
Is that Wasco Road?
I believe so.
And it's now known as Highway 46. Is that accurate?
Yes,
Okay. Is the flood canal still in place, to the best of your knowledge?
yes,
Was it in place in 1952, to the best of your knowledge?
yes,
Your exhibit KWBA 209 doesn't show any facilities within the orange lined area. Is that accurate?
I'm sorry, could you say that again, please?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I spoke too fast. This exhibit does not show any facilities within the orange lined areas. Is that accurate?
Oh, yes, that's correct.
Do you know whether there were lateral canals in place within that geographic area as of 1922?
I don't know.
And the red dashed line on this exhibit, that's the flood canal. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's correct.
To the best of your knowledge, is Buena Vista still operating the flood canal?
I don't know the answer to that.
Does Buena Vista manage water to go into the flood canal as of now?
I believe so, yes, I'm not certain.
Okay. Does water flow into the flood canal by flowing over the concrete weir?
That's my understanding.
And in general, on your exhibit 209, where would the concrete weir be located?
I know it's been relocated over time, but I believe it's essentially very close to where the outlet canal reaches the West Side Canal and East Side Canal. I think actually the historical location was maybe closer to where the main canal comes across, but upstream of that.
But generally at that southern end of Buena Vista's Button Willow service area.
Yes,
From the concrete weir to Wasco Road, how many miles is that in the flood canal?
I don't know offhand.
It's not as much as the 39 miles from Second Point to Wasco Road. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's correct.
But it's, let's say, could it be 30 miles from the concrete weir to Wasco Road?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Is the flood canal essentially adjacent for its entire length to the western boundary of Buena Vista's Button Willow service area?
I don't know. I believe that that's the case, yes.
That's what your exhibit 209 depicts?
That would suggest yes.
Is the flood canal lined?
I don't believe so, no.
Do you know if it has ever been lined?
I don't believe so, no.
If it's not lined, it's possible for water to percolate out of the flood canal. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And if water percolated out of the flood canal, could it percolate into Buena Vista's Button Willow service area?
Objection calls for speculation. Lack of foundation.
I'll overrule it. I think she's an engineer. You can qualify. Ms. Boissevain, feel free to qualify your answer.
Well, it would percolate into the channel itself. I would hesitate to speculate where it might go from there.
Do you understand the hydrogeology along the flood canal?
I do not.
So you have no understanding to the extent to which water released to the flood canal might percolate into the ground?
Well, I mean, I can see that from the records that were presented in plate 2 of Exhibit 7, that there's a measurement at Second Point and there's a measurement at Wasco Road. And there's a difference between those two. So I would assume that there would be percolation in the channel between those two locations.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Mullen, can we please go back to Ms. Boissevain's testimony in Exhibit KWBA 200? And I need to go to the bottom of page 14, which I believe is PDF page 50. Yes, thank you. And Ms. Mullen, could we please scroll down to paragraph 34? In this paragraph, Ms. Boissevain, you discuss Buena Vista's water use in 1952. Is that accurate?
Yes, I do. Among
Ms.
other,
Mullen, I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Ms. Boissevain.
I just said 52 among other years, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Mullen, can we please scroll to the next page, and which will be page 15 and line 2. Ms. Boissevain, you state on that line that according to your calculations in 1952, Buena Vista diverted 468,915 acre feet of water. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And I don't see any allowance for percolation out of the flood canal in your calculation. Is there any consideration of percolation out of the flood canal in that paragraph 34?
No, I considered water to be discharged through the concrete weir to be water that was released by Buena Vista out of Buena Vista's control. And so I did not include water in the flood channel. It's characterized in the records as flood releases. And so I treated it as a loss to the system.
And as we discussed earlier, it was approximately 30 miles of unlined canal from the concrete weir to Wasco Road. Is that accurate?
It's some distance. I don't know the precise distance, yes.
And Wasco Road is the northern boundary of Buena Vista's water Button Willow service area. Is that accurate?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
Ms. Boissevain, if water percolated out of the flood canal between the concrete weir and Wasco Road, could it have recharged groundwater in Buena Vista's Button Willow service area?
Objection, lack of foundation, calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Well, I do think that calls for speculation. It percolated into the channel again, as I stated earlier. Where it goes from the channel, I wouldn't care to speculate.
Okay, thank you. Have you analyzed at all the extent to which water percolating out of the flood canal recharges groundwater within the Button Willow service area?
No, I have not.
Thank you. Ms. Mullen, can we please scroll down to Ms. Boissevain's paragraph 43 in her testimony? Thank you very much. Ms. Boissevain, do you see here you're discussing in paragraph 43 Buena Vista's diversions in 1969?
Yes.
And on lines 16 and 17, you describe 510,803 acre feet of flood water diverted over the concrete weir. Do you see that?
I'm sorry, could you direct me again?
Yes.
Oh, I
On line-
see it. Yes, in line 16.
Yes.
Yes,
So in your analysis as described here, did you treat the 510,800 acres? I'm sorry. Did you treat the 510,803 acre feet diverted over the concrete weir as loss to the system?
yes, it was characterized in the records as floodwater release.
And that floodwater would have been released into the flood canal, correct?
Yes,
And some volume of it could have percolated through the flood canal?
yes.
Have you included any such percolation as a diversion by Buena Vista under the second point right in 1969?
No, I believe in my calculations deducted the 510,803 acre feet from my calculations.
In your analysis of Buena Vista's diversions in any year, have you included percolation out of the flood canal as a diversion by Buena Vista?
Well, I reported on percolation. I didn't characterize it as a diversion. Well, I might have characterized it as a diversion. I looked at percolation and I tabulated it separately from the surface diversions. And then I looked at the total of those two together.
Did you include percolation out of the flood canal in any of those calculations?
No, I did not.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mullen, can we go back up to, actually, Ms. Mullen, can we pull up Ms. Boissevain's PowerPoint KWBA 248? And can we please go to her slide 17? Ms. Boissevain, do you see that this is a slide depicting Buena Vista's current facilities?
Yes,
Do you include Lake Isabella as a facility Buena Vista uses in diverting water under its water right?
yes, I included it on my exhibit KWBA 223, which summarizes diversions and includes changes in storage in Lake Isabella.
Ms. Mullen, can we please go down to slide 21 of this PowerPoint? Ms. Boissevain, for the years after the line Lake Isabella 1954, did you include accumulation into Lake Isabella storage in every one of those years to the right of that line?
No, as I explained, this slide presents the diversions above and below second point in my exhibit. These are taken from exhibit KWBA 223, which also summarizes change in storage in Lake Isabella.
So for example, for 1969, as depicted on this slide, you did not include Buena Vista accumulating water into Lake Isabella storage. Is that accurate?
I did not have records for 1969 I didn't have the water master report for 1969 to be able to evaluate that.
For 1978, on this slide, did you include accumulation of water in storage by Buena Vista at Lake Isabella in that diversion number?
No, as I explained, this slide does not show the change in storage in Lake Isabella, but if we could pull up exhibit KWBA 223, you would see that I have the change in storage for Lake Isabella on that exhibit.
Actually, Ms. Boissevain, does this slide summarize your analysis of Buena Vista's diversions of Kern River water in high flow years?
It excludes the delivery, it excludes the change in storage in Lake Isabella. And if we can pull up exhibit KWBA 223, I think that's a more accurate representation of my analysis.
Actually, Ms. Boissevain, let's go to your testimony. If we could please go back, Ms. Mullen, to exhibit KWBA 200 and that paragraph 43. Ms. Boissevain, you see you're discussing Buena Vista's diversions in this paragraph. Is that accurate?
Yes,
None of these calculations in paragraph 43 include accumulation of water into storage at Lake Isabella. Is that correct?
that's correct. I did not have the hydrographic report for 1969.
Thank you.
I might point out too that the calculations submitted by Buena Vista in the report prepared by Dr. House don't include Lake Isabella for 1969 either.
Are you familiar with the fact that Buena Vista has already disclosed that Dr. House intends to correct that statement in its summary of his analysis?
I wasn't aware of that.
Thank you. And we discussed earlier on line 16, well, let me go back. You state on line 16 that 1,088,922 acre feet flowed past Second Point in 1969, correct?
I'm sorry, on line 16. Yes, I see that.
And we discussed earlier the flood water going into the flood canal, correct?
Yes,
And that was 510,803 acre feet. Is that accurate?
Objection asked and answered.
Okay.
Overruled. I
Boyce
think we're
Vane-
going through this step by step, and that's fine.
I don't need it. It's on the page. Thank you. Ms. Boyce-Vane, do you see on line 17, you also reflect 90,119 acre feet was pumped into the aqueduct?
yes,
After you subtract the flood water going into the flood canal and the water pumped into the California aqueduct from the Second Point flow, do you get a number of 488,000 acre feet?
I think, can you pull up my exhibit KWBA 224, please?
And Ms. Mullen, please go ahead and pull that up.
So this exhibit walks through my summary of the records, the Buena Vista operating records. Starting on the left-hand side, which I'm sorry I can't see, we have the total flow at Second Point. Then we have what are characterized in the records as river losses of 82,000 acre feet. And then the difference between those two is what I call total supply. Then I show floodwater over the concrete we're pumping to the California aqueduct, spreading, and then losses upstream of the canal diversions. And then I show a net supply for irrigation. And then I show the total water diverted for irrigation and to storage.
And none of the columns on this sheet include accumulation of water in Lake Isabella storage. Is that accurate?
That's correct. I didn't have the operating records for Lake Isabella in 1969.
Okay. So if you take your column, the result of your column 2, and you subtract your column 20, and then you also subtract your column 28, does that result in a difference of 488,000 acre feet?
I'm not good at math on the fly, but I will take your word for it that sounds like it would be roughly the number.
So is it your opinion that that number is the number of acre feet consumed in 1969 somewhere downstream of Second Point of measurement?
Well, I don't know if I would use the word consumed.
So that volume of water would not be water that went in the flood canal, correct?
Right, right.
That volume of water would not include water that was pumped to the aqueduct.
Right.
That volume of water is the amount of water that would have gone somewhere else downstream of Second Point. Is that
Correct.
accurate?
Yes.
So is it your opinion that approximately that amount of water was, I'm going to say, consumed somewhere downstream of Second Point?
And I'm going to object to the phrase consumed
Yeah.
as vague.
Okay.
Sustained. I appreciate that we haven't come up with a better word for it, but
So
maybe.
that's fine. I think we
Okay.
probably got what we need. Ms. Mullen, could we please go back to Ms. Boissevain's testimony, exhibit KWBA 200? And could we please scroll down to paragraph 44? Ms. Boissevain, do you see on line 28, page 18, you cite a Buena Vista water balance and then exhibit KWBA 222?
Yes.
Is that source the 2009 EIR by Buena Vista that you've referenced?
It's the water balance that's in Appendix A of that document. Yes.
Okay. Ms. Mullen, can we please pull up exhibit KWBA 222? And I believe it's PDF page 3, but I could be wrong. I'll take that back. It's PDF page 2. Thank you, Ms. Mullen. And if we could back out a little, Ms. Mullen, thank you. Read my mind again. Ms. Boissevain, was this the only source of data you used in analyzing Buena Vista's diversions in the year 1978?
Yes, I didn't have Buena Vista operational records for 1978. And so I used this because I didn't have more detailed records.
Did you review the Kern River Water Masters report for the year 1978?
Yes, I did.
Did you use those numbers as part of your analysis of Buena Vista's diversions for that year?
The water master reports don't include Buena Vista's diversions. They include they include numbers, but they basically show the water at Second Point, and they don't show how the water was distributed.
Okay, thank you. Can we, Ms. Mullen, can we please go back to Ms. Boissevain's testimony, KWBA 200?
I'm wondering if now might be a good time for another break, Ms. Kenzie. I'm amazed at our witnesses' stamina, but
That's just fine.
Is that works for you, Mr. Becerra?
Absolutely.
All right, let's take a 15-minute break. We will return at 3:50.
thank you.
All right, it looks like we can go back on the record and resume where we left off. Mr. Becerra, I turn things back to you. You are on mute, yes.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsey. So Ms. Boyce, Ms. Mullen, can we please pull up Ms. Boycevain's testimony, KWBA 200? And scroll down so we can see what we, there you go. Thank you very much. Ms. Boycevain, in your calculations of Buena Vista's diversions for 1978, they only included the two factors there on lines 26 and 28. Is that accurate?
I'd like to request that you pull up KWBA 223.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mullen. If you can zoom in. So for 1978, the two numbers that are discussed in the paragraph that we were just reviewing are the diversions upstream of Second Point and downstream of Second Point. And so here you can see there was also change in Isabella storage of 69,564 acre feet. So it should be the sum of those three that would represent the total diversions to storage and direct diversions, which is what the paragraph discusses.
So your total Second Point diversion in 1978, as stated in your written testimony, is the 271,872 acre feet in your column labeled subtotal on this exhibit 223. Is that accurate?
That represents the diversions at Second Point and the upstream diversions, those two numbers added together. I would add to that the change in Lake Isabella storage to come up with the total diversion amount. That the paragraph references the two direct diversions.
So to get the total diversions under the Second Point right by Buena Vista, 1978, in your opinion, we would add the change in Isabella storage to the number for that year in the subtotal column?
Yes.
And trying to do math quickly here, that's approximately 341,000 acre feet. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Thank you. And that number includes no percolation out of the flood canal into Buena Vista's service area. Is that accurate?
That's correct. For this particular year, I used the water balance to establish what was available at Second Point because I didn't have better records. I didn't have operational records from Buena Vista.
Do you know whether the California aqueduct was damaged by the storm in February 1978?
I don't have knowledge of that.
Do you know whether water that went through the intertie in 1978 was routed upstream in the aqueduct for diversion by Buena Vista?
I don't have knowledge of that.
Have you reviewed DWR's Bulletin 132 for state water project operations for 1978?
No, I have not.
Thank you. Can we, actually, we can probably stay on this exhibit 223 for 1983. For 1983, Ms. Boycevain, was your data source the Buena Vista water balance that's in exhibit 222?
Yes.
Was that the only data source you used for that year?
Well, I used that, plus I used the annual hydrographic reports to summarize the exchanges and sales and groundwater banking above Second Point. And then I also used the annual hydrographic report for the change in Isabella storage.
in your testimony, paragraph 45, you don't include change in Isabella storage.
That's
for your
correct.
1980.
Paragraph 45 summarizes again the direct diversions for upstream of Second Point and downstream of Second Point. It doesn't include the change in storage, but I would add that to come up with a total diversion amount.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to go to 1998.
Mhm.
Your total diversions for 1998 here are 420,903 acre feet. Is that accurate?
No, I think I would characterize that as the total of the surface diversions upstream of Second Point, the surface diversions at Second Point, and the groundwater spreading that was indicated in the records. So that total represents the sum of those three values.
Okay. Ms. Mullen, can we please go to Ms. Boissevain's testimony exhibit KWBA 200 and her paragraph 46? So Ms. Boissevain, in lines 7 through 9, is there just a mathematical calculation error in calculating the total?
I'm sorry, let me compare it back to my exhibit 223. So I'm sorry, you said, is there a mathematical error?
Yes, on line 8, you state total diversions to be 295,346 acre feet. Is that the correct total?
No, I don't believe that it is.
Is the correct total
Yeah.
420,903 acre feet?
Yes, it would. Well, no, I think the correct total. Well, I guess I should state that the total of 420,903 acre feet includes the surface diversions upstream of Second Point, the surface diversions downstream of Second Point, and the groundwater spreading. That's how I arrived at that total.
And that's, so do you need to correct your total number there in line 8?
Well, I don't know that I would I don't know how to characterize the groundwater spreading. I don't know whether that should be characterized as a surface diversion or not. I think that gets into a legal issue that I don't feel that I can answer.
Okay, so let's keep that number of 420,903 in mind.
Okay.
So can we please go back to Ms. Boissevain's exhibit KWBA 223? Please, Ms. Mullen. Ms. Boissevain, do you see in your total column for 1998 the total of 420,903?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. For 2011, was your single data source that exhibit KWBA 222, the water balance?
No, it was not. In 2011, I did have distribution of flows at Second Point from Buena Vista Records.
Was that your sole data source for that year?
No, I used that, plus I used the annual hydrographic reports for column A.
Did you use the Water Master report for 2011?
Oh, yes, I used the Water Master report from the annual hydrographic report to come up with the value shown in the column labeled A. So that would be the 195,122.
Are you aware that the Army Corps of Engineers began restricting Lake Isabella storage in 2006?
Yes,
Is that restriction of storage, could that affect how much diversions were in 2011?
potentially.
Is it possible that Buena Vista and other Kern County districts banked more groundwater in 2011 as a result of the Army Corps' restriction on Isabella storage?
Action calls for speculation, incomplete hypothetical.
I'll sustain it, but maybe you can ask it in part at the risk of taking more time. Maybe you can ask it in parts, Mr. Pizzera. I understand what you're getting at.
I'll give it a shot. Ms. Boissevain, in 2011, was Lake Isabella storage restricted relative to what Lake Isabella storage was in 1998?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Is it possible that as a result of that restriction, Buena Vista and other Kern County water districts banked more groundwater in 2011 than they did in 1998?
Same objection.
Overruled this time.
Again, I don't have specific information on that, so I don't feel that I can answer that question.
Thank you. I'm going down to the next line here on Exhibit 223 for 2017. Did you shift data sources to the supplemental statements of diversion and use?
Yes, I did.
Did you have the Water Master report for 2017 available to you?
I had the Water Master report, but I didn't have information on Buena Vista operations below Second Point. So in this case, I chose to use the supplemental statements of diversion and use to use a consistent data set between the two, for the two values, the upstream and downstream.
Okay. And you don't cite Buena Vista's Second Point records as a data source as you did for 1998 and 2011. Is that accurate?
That's accurate because I did not have those records available to me.
You stated elsewhere water did not go through the intertie in 2017, correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's my understanding.
Do you know whether management of supplies under the lower river right changed from, excuse me, let me try that again. Do you know whether operations under the lower river right were different in 2017 versus 1998?
I don't have information on that.
Do you know whether diversions under the lower river right began earlier in 2017 than they did in 1998?
I don't have information on that. No, I don't know.
Do you know whether any water subject to the lower river right flowed north of Highway 46 in 2017?
No, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mullen, can we please pull up Exhibit KWBA 222? And Ms. Boissevain, this is the water balance from a Buena Vista EIR you used as a data source, correct?
Yes.
Do you see the column headed KR supply AF?
Yes.
What do you understand the numbers in that column to mean?
Ms. Mullen, can you please blow up the image a little bit and pull in, there's a note 2 at the bottom that I think explains what that value is. So that column is labeled 2, and then the note 2 below indicates that that's the Buena Vista Kern River supply. And then it says parenthetically, surface deliveries to the Kern River intertie and surface sales to other in-county jurisdictions downstream of Second Point taken out.
Thank you. Do you understand that column to state the full volume of supplies from the Kern River that were available to Buena Vista in the listed years?
Without having more information on the water balance, I'm not sure that I can answer that. I'm not sure I can answer that, but I think the note suggests that that's the case.
But you relied on this document in analyzing Buena Vista's Kern River diversions for multiple years in your testimony. Is that accurate?
I believe I used it for 2 years, and that was because I didn't have better data. I didn't have access to the Buena Vista operational records. And so I felt that this was a source that was produced by Buena Vista. It was Buena Vista's calculations. And so I used it for those years where I didn't have detailed operational data.
Do you know whether that column headed KR supply AF includes accumulation of water into Buena Vista's share of Lake Isabella storage?
I don't know that.
Ms. Mullen, can we please go back up to the top of the document here so we can see the column headings? Ms. Boissevain, do you see the column headed SWP supply AF?
Yes, I do.
What is your understanding of what the numbers in that column are?
Can you scroll down, Ms. Mullen, so I can take a look at note 4, please? So what it states there is that state water project plus pool purchases, no banking for third party.
Do you know what the face value of Buena Vista's subcontract for state water project supplies is?
I'm gonna hang on, Ms. Boissevain. I'm gonna object on grounds of relevance.
Mr. Bizzaro, where are we going?
The numbers in this column exceed the face value of Buena Vista's state water project subcontract. And I want to understand if Ms. Boissevain understands what's going on in that column.
Overruled. I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead.
Ms. Boissevain, do you understand that the face value of Buena Vista's state water project subcontract is 21,300 acre feet per year?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Ms. Mullen, can we pull back a little bit so we can see the whole table? Ms. Boissevain, do you see that there are numbers that exceed 21,300 acre feet in that column of state water project supplies?
Yes, I do.
Are you aware that Buena Vista exchanges Kern River water in order to obtain state water project supplies from other state project contractors?
I am, but the Kern River exchanges are accounted for in the deliveries above Second Point. In looking at total diversion.
And that would, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was just saying in looking at surface diversions, I looked at diversions upstream of Second Point, which would include those exchange numbers. And then I looked at diversions at Second Point, plus then Lake Isabella storage.
Do you understand those exchange numbers to be diversions to the recipients of Kern River water as part of those exchanges?
Yes.
And then Buena Vista at some other point in time would receive state water project water in exchange for that Kern River water. Is that accurate?
I'm not sure of the details of how the exchanges work.
You understand that Buena Vista receives state water project water in exchange for allowing others to divert Kern River water under the second point, right?
That's my understanding.
In this column headed SWP supply AF, do you see that there are quite a number of lines where that number exceeds 21,300 acre feet?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained. Just move on to the next question. Next up.
Ms. Boissevain, do you see that in the year 1981, Buena Vista had a state water project supply of 62,000 acre feet?
Yes, I see that.
Do you know whether any of that was state water project water supply that they received in exchange for Kern River supply?
I don't know that.
Do you see in 1984, Buena Vista received 55,937 acre feet state water project supply?
Yes, I do.
Do you know whether that was part of an exchange?
I do not.
Do you know whether any of the numbers in the column headed SWP supply AF reflect Buena Vista receiving state project water in exchange for Kern River water?
Objection cumulative. She's already testified. She's not familiar with the details of the exchanges.
Overruled. Let's just get it on the record and we'll go forward from there.
Yes, I'm not familiar with the details of the exchanges. And again, I accounted for the water based on the Kern River deliveries above second point, excuse me, in the information that was provided in the Water Master report.
And those would be the diversions by other state project contractors of Buena Vista's second point water, correct?
Correct.
And then Buena Vista would receive state water project water in exchange. Do you understand that?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
I think not all of those, I should point out that not all of the diversions above second point are exchanges. There were also deliveries to groundwater banking programs and possibly sales as well.
Thank you. Ms. Mullen, can we please go to exhibit KWBA 200, Ms. Boissevain's testimony? And can we please go to just a moment. PDF page 5, which would be hard copy page 4. And that'd be paragraph 9. Actually, Ms. Mullen, can we scroll down to the next page? Thank you very much. Ms. Boissevain, do you see this sentence that begins on line 3?
Yes,
And your conclusion was that before 2008, Buena Vista reported diversions to its canal facilities below second point in its statements to the state board. Is that accurate?
yes,
And then in the following sentence, you state that Buena Vista changed its practice after 2008. Is that correct?
yes,
And then you also state that in that paragraph that this change in reporting seems to coincide with that 2008 EIR. Is that right?
yes. I believe that the EIR was in 2009.
Thank you. Ms. Mullen, can we please pull up, I'm sorry, let me stop for a second. Can we please go to PDF page 23 in this document? And we're looking for paragraph 55. So if we could scroll down a little further. In this paragraph, do you identify Buena Vista's 2011 statement of water diversion and use as one that indicates how they change their reporting?
Yes.
Ms. Mullen, can we please pull up Ms. Boissevain's PowerPoint, exhibit KWBA 248, and go to slide 24. Thank you. Ms. Boissevain, is this that supplemental statement of diversion and use for 2011 you identified as reflecting a change in Buena Vista's methodology?
Well, it's one of the, I don't remember whether there were 4 or 5 statements on which water use was reported. This is one of them.
And you have the citation here of this, your exhibit 241 PDF page 282. Correct? This is one of the ones that you identify as reflecting a change in methodology. Is that accurate?
Yes. That year of 2011, yes.
Ms. Mullen, can we please go to Ms. Boissevain's exhibit KWBA 241? Ms. Boissevain, do you recognize this exhibit as a compilation of Buena Vista's statements of diversion and use?
Yes.
Have you reviewed all of the documents in this exhibit?
I've reviewed, well, I've reviewed them. I don't know that I've reviewed them in detail recently. There's a lot of documents. I think that's a 360-page document.
You rely on this document to state your opinion that Buena Vista changed its reporting methodology after 2008. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate.
Ms. Mullen, can we please go to PDF page 282? And Ms. Boissevain, is this that 2011 statement of diversion and use on which you rely?
Yes, can you blow that up, please? Yes.
And
That
I
was,
believe
let's see, that was one of the ones. Again, there were multiple statements filed in 2011.
and you called out that one important fact about this is that the amounts diverted and the amounts beneficially used were the same amount. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Ms. Mullen, can we please scroll to the bottom of this page? Ms. Boissevain, who signed this document on behalf of Buena Vista Water Storage District?
Well, I don't know who signed it. The contact information is listed as Mr. Nick Torres.
Mr. Torres is now an employee of the Kern Water Bank Authority. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is.
Do you rely on him as one of your principal sources of information for your testimony?
Yes, with regard to operations below Second Point.
Thank you. Ms. Mullen, can we please go to PDF page 13 and exhibit KWBA 241? Ms. Boissevain, in your testimony, you state the opinion that one of the changes Buena Vista made after the 2009 EIR was to begin reporting exchanges on its statements of diversion and use. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Ms. Mullen, can we please scroll down a little bit so we can see the bottom paragraph? Ms. Boissevain, do you see the bottom paragraph? It should be noted.
Yes.
Ms. Boissevin, do you recognize this as a June 21st, 1984 letter from Buena Vista to the state board?
Can you scroll back up, please? Yes.
Ms. Boissevin, do you see in the bottom paragraph of this letter that Buena Vista stated the amounts of its exchanges to the state board for the years 1981 through 1983?
Yes, and this is the clarification that I brought up at the beginning of my testimony, that these are numbers that appear in the cover letters, which provide context, but these values are not reported in the statements of diversion and use. And my analysis was of the statements of diversion, supplemental statements of diversion and use.
So, Ms. Boissevin, is your opinion that Buena Vista changed its reporting methodology to state board to include exchanges after 2009? Based on the fact it put its exchange numbers in the statements rather than in the cover letters?
Well, I think that's one change. There are other changes in the reporting after 2008 because I wasn't able to align the second point uses that had been historically reported on with the different numbers. And they appear to be the operational exchanges, but I think there are other things that were changed in the methodology as well. But I was unable to ascertain what those were.
Thank you. Ms. Mullen, can we please go to PDF page 15 in exhibit KWBA 241?
And Mr. Becerra, just, I'm sorry to interrupt you for a moment. Just to let you know, because we do have a hard stop at 5, it's 4:23, and I do want to have a chance to talk about Mr. Torres. So I will ask you to at least wrap up for the day in the next 10 minutes. So when you have a convenient breaking point, let's do that.
Okay, I'll attempt to get that done. Ms. Boissevin, do you see that this is a January 27th, 1987 letter by which Buena Vista submitted its statements of diversion and use to the state board?
Yes.
And do you see in the bottom paragraph, Buena Vista informed the state board of its exchanges in 1984, 1985, and 1986?
Yes.
Ms. Mullen, can we please go to PDF page 25 in this exhibit? Ms. Boissevin, do you see that this is a July 6th, 1990 letter from Buena Vista to the state board transmitting its statements of diversion and use?
And I'm just going to object. These documents speak for themselves.
Ms. Boissevin has made much of the fact that Buena Vista did not report its exchanges to the state board before 2009.
I think she's also explained that. And again, the objection stands that the cover letters say what they say.
I think that's right. It's partially in the interest of time, Mr. Becerra. I think we've established that Ms. Boissevin considered the statements of diversion and use and not the cover letters. I'm not sure going through the cover letters will reveal anything additional to that with respect to Ms. Boissevin's analysis, but if there are specific questions that you think will add to our analysis, you may proceed with those.
Let me try to get that done with one question. Ms. Boissevin, are there multiple cover letters in exhibit KWBA 241 in which Buena Vista informed the state board of its exchanges before 2008?
Yes, there are.
Do you know, are there 5 or 6 of them?
I don't recall. I think they were filed with the triennial reports starting in the early 1980s through, I think, it was the early 2000s.
So from approximately 1981 through 2008, Buena Vista did inform the state board via cover letters of its exchanges of Kern River water for state water project water. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions from Ms. Boissevin.
Thank you, Mr. Becerra. That's a convenient breaking point. So I will ask so that I know, and for planning purposes, is there anyone else who was planning to cross-examine Ms. Boissevin? And Mr. Bivens, are you planning to have redirect for Ms. Boissevain?
I'd like 5 minutes to think about it. And if I
That's
do,
fine.
it will be very brief.
You don't need to tell me. We're not going to do it today. So
Okay.
I just
I
was
get a whole
planning.
night.
So, but what I would like to, so thank you, Ms. Boissevain, for your testimony today. We may see you tomorrow, or we will see you tomorrow because I may have questions actually. So please, if
Okay.
you would join us tomorrow, I would appreciate it. But I think for today, I appreciate you staying with us as long as you have. And we can move on. I'd like to talk about Mr. Torres. I know we have pending evidentiary motions with respect to Dr. David's testimony. Mr. Torres is just one part of that. I had asked earlier, Mr. Becerra, I brought forward the proposal of whether KWBA could make Mr. Torres available. Mr. Becerra, you had indicated, which appropriately so, that you needed a chance to think about it. I thought I would give a little more background. I'm not prepared to rule on the evidentiary motion. I think it's difficult, but let me give you a sense of what I'm thinking about Mr. Torres and this Dr. David's testimony. And I will just say that as I've discussed in my written evidentiary rulings, my understanding of the bar for admissibility in administrative proceedings is quite low when it comes to relevant evidence, and that part of my function here is not so much to serve as a gatekeeper in the way that you'd see in court proceedings with a strict application of the rule of evidence, but my role is to sort through that evidence once it comes in and determine, or at least put forward in a proposed order for the board's consideration, the relative weight to be afforded to that evidence. So that's how I see my role. So hearsay, as we all know, hearsay is allowed in administrative proceedings. It cannot be relied upon in and of itself over an objection, but it is admissible. In addition, hearsay can be an appropriate basis for expert testimony. But in this case, what is bothering me here really is the fact that this seems to be gratuitous hearsay. It's not, we have a whole host of historical records, this kind of thing. There's nothing we can do about that. We can't go back in time. In this case, we do have Mr. Torres, and he seems, as far as I know, is alive and well and is available to testify. So it's the gratuitous hearsay that's just causing me a little bit of a concern, because my goal in this proceeding is to get to the truth of the matter and get the best evidence we can and consider it and put it forward to the state board in a proposed order. Mr. O'Brien had indicated that Mr. Torres could be available to testify on Monday. That's one way, obviously, the easiest way from my perspective to solve the problem of hearsay is to hear from the person. Now, Mr. Becerra, you already pointed out, not inappropriately, that there's a fairness issue here because the deadline for submitting case in chief testimony evidence was April 4th. On the flip side of that, Buena Vista has known about the reliance on Mr. Torres since April 4th, and as far as I know, hasn't sought to depose him. I know there was a pretty rapid timeline that we were operating under. So that is where I'm at in this consideration of all things considered, having not yet made up my mind on how we proceed from there. But I did want to be forthright in my thinking, because I've found in the past, sometimes we're able to come up with solutions that work for all of us and that make sense in the particular situation. I will turn to you, Mr. Becerra. I think it's your turn, given that we put forward this proposal of bringing Mr. Torres in, and I think it's your turn to make a response to that proposal or put forward another proposal.
That as a result of our cross-examination of Dr. Davids, we now understand better the role of Mr. Torres's information. We continue to object to it as hearsay and do not want to engage in receiving surprise testimony via what would essentially be hostile examination. So we don't see any need to bring Mr. Torres in. We do believe that his testimony is case-specific hearsay that should not be admitted. There is the government code section that says hearsay can be admitted, but over an objection is not grounds for a finding. that would seem to be where we are, that Mr. Torres's testimony and everything based on it cannot be grounds for a finding under the government code.
Thank you, Mr. Becerra.
Ms. Kinsey, can I
Yes.
be heard briefly on this?
Absolutely.
I guess Mr. Becerra can make whatever decisions he chooses to make, but I just want the record to be absolutely clear that we are prepared to bring Mr. Torres to the hearing and have him testify. And that should solve whatever hearsay concerns Mr. Becerra may have. I do want to reiterate that it's our position that it was perfectly reasonable for Dr. Davids to rely on this very experienced operator. And as Dr. Davids testified, this is part of what he does when there's not data available. A reasonable engineer goes out in the field and finds experienced operators and spends substantial time with them and evaluates the credibility of that information. That's exactly what happened here. So if Mr. Becerra chooses not to examine Mr. Torres, that's his decision, but I want to make our offer absolutely clear on the record.
And Ms. Kinsey, if I might respond,
Yes, you may.
we had a very tight deadline. We received 4 witnesses' testimony on April 4th, including an extremely complex technical analysis by Dr. Davids. Mr. Torres is a water bank employee and could have been presented as written testimony ahead of the deadline. And we are not going to engage in receiving surprise testimony in this hearing. We understand what Dr. Davids did. We continue to object to him relying on case-specific hearsay.
Thank you, Mr. Becerra. Does anyone else want to chime in on this issue?
I will add one additional offer to the record, Ms. Kinsey.
Okay.
Between now and the time we come back in June for the rebuttal phase, if Mr. Becerra wants to depose Mr. Torres so that there is no surprise, he's welcome to do so.
Thank you. So with that, Mr. O'Brien and Mr. Bivens, I think absent a request from one of the parties, I'm not going to call Mr. Torres in on my own to the extent I have authority to do that. So you can thank him for the offer of time. I don't think we will be needing to see him on Monday based on this, so we can plan our schedule accordingly. I will plan to issue a ruling on the outstanding evidentiary motions in the morning. We can start with it. But maybe we'll start with it first thing before we even step back into Ms. Boissevain's, if there is any redirect, because we won't be interrupting anything. And then we'll all have a better understanding of where we're going with moving the KWBA's exhibits into the record. Does that seem like a reasonable approach, or are there any objections to that timeline?
None here, Ms. Kinsey.
I have one question. Did you say we'll receive a written ruling?
I did not say that. I was going to give it orally.
Oh, that's fine. I just wanted to understand.
I was not. Are there any other procedural items we should address before we close for the day?
Ms. Kinsey, I know we have a hard stop at 5. You made that very clear. I'm prepared to waive any redirect of Ms. Boissevain. I think we had a very thorough testimony from her, and frankly, she's been away from home for several nights, so it may not be possible. I realize you have your own schedule, but if it were possible to conclude her testimony today, I would greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. I'm going to, well, let's let me look at my notes. So let's not take let's take a 5-minute break while I just look at my notes, see if I have any additional questions, check with my team to see if they have, I think there'd be very few, so it's possible we may be able to excuse her. So please just 4 minutes. We'll come back at 4:40 and we'll see if we can wrap this up. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I am back on. I am, we'll wait for Mr. O'Brien. Unless you're covering Mr. Bivens. Oh, he's back. Okay. I wanted you to hear the good news, Mr. O'Brien, which is that I've checked with my team and looked at my notes. I do not have any additional questions for Ms. Boisavain, so there is no reason to keep her. I think we can start in the morning. As I said, we may have some evidentiary matters, but we can start in the morning with Mr. Parker. So with that, I want to thank you, Ms. Boisavain, for joining us and for your testimony today. I really appreciate you being with us. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other matters we should address before we reconvene tomorrow morning?
Thank you.
Hearing
Mr.
Officer Coonsey, this is Scott Cuny. I'm just trying to get a sense, and I'm really going to ask a crystal ball question. But for trying to schedule our witnesses, it looks to me if we have one more from the water bank, all of the witnesses from Buena Vista,
I believe there are 6, right? From
6,
Buena Vista.
and then the agency. I'm going to ask the question: is it reasonable for me to assume that our witnesses would not be testifying before Monday?
Yes,
Okay,
I'll give
I
that.
won't ask for more than that.
Okay, but I'm happy to give that. Yes, that is a reasonable assumption.
Okay.
Anything else, Mr. Cooney?
No.
Mr. Becerra, did I hear something from you as well?
I was just saying thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to make sure I didn't cut anyone off. Is there anything else to address? Thank you. Thank you so much. I will see all of you in the morning.
Thank you.